What's up, MotoBrewskis, and what's up? In this video is a review, a side-by-side comparison of the Garmin XT2 versus the Gaia GPS. So the question is, one's a brick that can survive the apocalypse,
Some kind of apocalypse.
and the other is a digital Swiss Army knife. Now, if you're planning a ride deeper than the Colorado Canyon, or if you're going into hardcore remote areas, chances are that you've either used the Garmin XT2 or you've used the Gaia GPS, or maybe a combination of both. So let's break down what actually matters before you drop cash or get stranded with a dead phone on a ridgeline. So the first thing is this: it's the price tag, right? Garmin hits you upfront with $600, but then the unit is effectively yours, right? And so for $600, yeah, it's not exactly the cheapest unit out there, but it is yours. There's no additional subscriptions unless you're syncing with like Garmin InReach or the Mini as an example, or whether you want other services like live weather or extra layers. Now, Gaia, on the other hand, they use what's called a freemium business model, so it's free to use, but then they slap you with a $40 annual subscription for the pro version, or $60 for the premium version, to get access, quite frankly, to the features that you want. So when it's free, it's kind of a bit rubbish. But then when you pay, you get cool features, new layers, and stuff like that. So the next point is this: navigation. Now, the Garmin XT2 is really plug and play. It attaches to my bike. It's pretty straightforward. It allows you to do turn by turn directioning, if you like. And it follows trails, not just roads. You can use something called the adventure mode, set different levels to that, and it will take you on known routes, which is pretty badass. But it can put you or extend your routes quite significantly. In terms of the XT2 and signaling and that kind of stuff, well, it uses satellites, right? So it's not ever going to run out of connectivity. On the other hand, if you're using Gaia as an example, if you don't plan your route in Gaia, download the GPX, and then import it into a riding device like a Garmin, and you don't do that, and then you don't have signal, you're not going to be able to use your routes, right? So Gaia is kind of like a bit hit and miss, especially if you're navigating on the trail as well. If you've got fat fingers, like I do as an example, pinching and zooming and snapping to routes can be a bit frustrating. So in terms of maps and layering, so the Gaia is quite frankly like the way to go, right? So you get tons of different layers, from MBUM, slope, angle, private, public, land, weather overlays. What I love specifically about Gaia is you can see on the route like where your phone signal is going to be or not, right? And so from a data perspective, you get a lot richer data. And you can take these layers and you can kind of stack them like pancakes, and then toggle the different transparencies that you want and that kind of stuff. Garmin XT2, on the other hand, it's much, much simpler. I'm a great believer in just keeping things simple. But you do get topography maps. You do get things like trail maps. You can see basic land ownership as an example. And it's clean, it's fast, and reliable. And when you're out there, that's kind of what you're looking for. But the bottom line with that one is that it's not as rich, the XT2, as Gaia. And so I touched on earlier offline functionality. So the Garmin is completely standalone. It attaches to my Red Tower. It's got a 7-inch TFT sunlight readable display. So unlike a Gaia as an example, if you are loading it up onto your bike, and then the sunlight's on it, your phone can even overheat as an example, right? So it's not bueno, really, from my perspective. But the Garmin, it's kind of built for purpose, right? It's waterproof. It's built for rough weather conditions. And so for me, from a navigational on the bike experience, Garmin is definitely the way to go. With the Gaia, you can obviously run out of phone power. In that case, you're going to want to use a sort of a power bank or something like that. So I mentioned the screen. Now, the screen on the Garmin is 7-inch. It's completely badass. And when it's attached to your bike and the power supply, it's never going to run out of power. And so the Gaia, on the other hand, as I mentioned, it is on your phone, and it can be power hungry. Apps aren't exactly, let's just say, economic when it comes to power supply, right? So if you don't have a power bank with you, you can wind up with just a dead phone, which is actually what happened on a ride recently with to Oklahoma and stuff like that. Okay, so what about file handling? So GPX file handling as an example. So both support GPX export import, and so the Garmin you can easily upload directly within to the device with a micro SD card. You can also attach it to your computer as an external device. You can use the Garmin Explore app, which is similar to Gaia on the web also. And then you can plan your routes, export the GPX, and then import them into your XT. If you're using Gaia and on the web, you plan your routes, and then the moment you save your routes, it will automatically sync that to the Gaia app on your phone. So horses for courses. And then what's really important in terms of the next point here is community, right, and shared routes. And so with Gaia, it's probably one of its unfair advantages in that you've got so many users, they're planning all sorts of routes, there's campsites on there and all that kind of stuff. And you can get some of that data into the XT2 as well, but it's not as rich, right? So you can get that in Gaia as an example. And then the community, keeps getting more valuable the more routes are being created and stuff like that. And so I'm a great believer in just use routes that other people have already used, and then take that and then import them into your riding device. So what about live features? So live features with the Garmin XT, I should start with the negative stuff. So I recently did a ride to Oklahoma, and it was 350 miles. The fuel range is only 200 on the bike. You can set your max fuel range inside the Garmin XT2. And so I kept getting this stupid message going, distance exceeds your fuel, distance, find, a gas station as an example. And it just kept coming up the whole time. Ding, ding. And I was like, no, don't find, I'm fine. And it was very frustrating because it actually couldn't even access the map. So there's a setting somewhere in here that you need to deactivate. And so then those messages won't come up. It's also got track recorder as well on the Garmin XT2. So you can track your rides in real time and that kind of stuff and save waypoints as you go. It also connects with your phone. If you're using Cardo, it also connects to that. You can do group rides as an example with the Garmin XT2, so you can actually see where everybody is in real time, and you can't do that with the Gaia. So when you're on the trail, definitely the XT2 is the way to go. And so from an updates perspective, Gaia is constantly adding new features. Their community is adding new layers as an example. And so there's constant updates needed with Gaia. XT2, from an updates perspective, they're less frequent. And so for me, again, just simplicity. I don't want to have to keep updating, apps and things like that to get the best riding experience. So what are guys actually doing out there on the trail? Are they just using the XT2 or are they just using Gaia? And the answer is they're actually using a combination of both, right? They're using the Swiss Army knife to plan the routes on Gaia, and then they're using XT2 to actually run the routes itself. And so from my experience, you can just use Gaia or you can just use the XT2. You're going to be fine either way, but you have to just recognize, if you put the bike into a river and you drop it and your phone is attached to your bike and you lose your phone as an example, you've lost your route, dude, and then what? And so again, from an ecosystem perspective, I prefer Garmin simply because of it's like iTunes, basically. Once you have an iPhone, it's very hard to go to an Android as an example because of the ecosystem of services that are available. Specifically safety services, as I mentioned, the Garmin Mini 2 is what I use, and they're integrated, right? And so that's really important. And so from my experience, don't pick one, run both, right? Use the Gaia to plan and then use the adventure or the XT2 to actually ride the adventure together. So here's the thing, they're kind of like whiskey and campfires. They just go together really well, Gaia and the XT2. So that concludes this video, guys. What are you using to plan your routes, run your routes while you're out there on the adventure bikes and the trails? Let me know in the comments below. My name is Matt, signing out, and I'll see you again soon.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and most importantly, share it with your favorite MotoBrewski.